listeners that shows up nearly every live show.
Oh, awesome.
Nearly. Like a real kid, it can't be counted on every time. Just nearly every time.
Gotta have some time off.
Yeah. All right, let's do a sound check real quick.
Get ready to laugh.
Okay, that sound good to you guys about that level? Okay. Here we go.
Get ready to laugh out loud with Wise and Nerdy, the show hosted by two hilarious dads who bring their unique blend of wit, wisdom, and nerdiness to the airwaves. From sharing hilarious anecdotes about their own experiences to giving advice on navigating the ups and downs of life, these two dads have got you covered. But that's not all. They're also obsessed with all things nerdy, from comic books and sci-fi movies to video and board games. So whether you're a fellow dad, a pop culture fanatic, or just in need of a good laugh, this is Wise and Nerdy. And now let's have some fun.
You're not the dad of me, Mike. I can be mad if I want to. I don't have to have fun. But you know what? I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I am Charles McFall, the Rock Out of Podcasting. Over there to, I don't know if it's left or right on your screen, but it's Joseph_Ard.
How's it going?
And for...
But you holler that he's not your dad, but he's old enough to be.
He kind of is. He kind of is. And he's as distant as a dad, too. So there's that. I love Mike. Mike Woodard. Hope you tune in and you're all well, sir. But joining us tonight is Douglas A. Burton, author of The Heroine's Labyrinth. I always want to say Heroine's Labyrinth, and that's never right.
It's such a tricky word because you could just go off rails really quick.
Yeah, especially if you let me start talking. It goes off rails really quick. So we're going to have some fun tonight. Kurt is out. He threw Slurpees at fans. I don't know what his message meant. I just know he can't be here tonight. So there's that. Joe, wait, I think we have a button. Let's see.
It's the question of the week.
There we go.
What's a great book you've read recently?
Now, here's the question. Do we have to finish the book?
No. If you've enjoyed it and it comes to your mind, go for it. The Bible's really long. I know, Charles. It takes a long time to read it.
Look, I can't read that much. I gotta have my comic book action Bible if you want me to read anything. Okay, but honestly, this is one of the regrets of growing up. When I was younger, avid reader all the time, and I got jobs that were boring, so I'd actually have stacks of books from the library I could read. And then as I got and really got into media creation and digital media, I started consuming media, and then my life got into a flow of being able to watch or listen to something. And I love Dean Koontz, and I'll get those books on Audible every once in a while. But for actual reading, mine is our good friend Bob McGough. I started the Southern Saudade. I had to look it up on the screen. I can't remember what it's called because it's such a weird name. I think that's how you say it. Saudade, Saudade, Saudade.
Is that the first one in his series then?
No. This is the one that he said was it's all his short stories, and he said that's really.
Oh, that's right. The compilation one.
Like he put most of himself in that book, so that's the one I bought. And I've read the first 2 stories. Really, really love them. Really excited. And there's probably a good 15 more stories to go through. So that's why I asked if I had to finish it. I finished 2 stories, and that's good. But yeah.
It's funny. So he recommended that one to you.
Yeah.
He recommended a different one to me. It wasn't even part of any of his series. It was this one about what he learned during his journey to getting published type of book. So that's one I ended up buying from him when we were down at Conjuration.
Like a memoir?
No, kind of, but it on the cover, just this encapsulates a lot of his personality. On the cover, it says "Special Edition" with even more swear words.
Yeah, but and Bob's books, Douglas, so you kind of understand the reference there is well, how does he describe it, Joe? Wizards on meth.
Yeah, it's a meth wizard from Alabama, from the boonies.
Oh my God, that's a great premise.
Yeah. which I may or may. I think I'd rather just pay him to read it to me. Not audiobook. Like, Bob, just let's do meet every week, and you read a chapter at a time to me, buddy.
Perform it live.
What about you, Douglas? What's one of your favorite books?
The book that I most recently read that was very, there's certain books you like, and there's certain books you kind of aim for, and then every now and then you kind of go off the beaten path, and someone recommends a book, and you're like, all right, I'll give it a shot, and you're caught off guard by how much you like this bizarre book. And I recently just read this book called Bride of the Tornado by James Kennedy. And it's such a strange book. All sense of reality is like you're completely off kilter the entire story. And
wow.
you flip pages just trying to find something stable to grab a hold of. And the author has a great ability to make you feel grounded, even though none of it is coherent. Like it's seemingly incoherent at times. But it was really good. It's called Bride of the Tornado. I thought it was fantastic.
Bride of the Tornado. I haven't even heard of that one. I'll have to give it a look.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not. I don't even know what genre to put it in. It was just so off kilter and different and bizarre, So your sense of reality is definitely tested every page.
Is that like the comic books version of? I think it's not called Bizarro, because Bizarro was a Superman character. Oh man, there's a style of comic books that sounds similar, where it's just this crazy weirdness out there, but somehow you follow it, and it's not just
right. I would say it's like that.
Yeah.
There's something that feels coherent as you're reading it, and then you stop and you think, you're like, what the heck is going on? But it's good. I made it all the way to the end, which, to Charles' point, is not so easy these days. There's so much going on that, I used to plow through 2 books a month, like clockwork, and if I was lucky, even more. And now it's, I really have to pick my spots, and I really got to stay focused if I'm going to get through them. So it's just tougher.
Yeah. And I do love audiobooks. I'm in the car a lot, but I listen to a lot of podcasts too, since that's, what I do. But it's weird. Right. And I want a side note here. Doug, you talk about you have a day job and this too, like all of us here. And on your ride, I get torn between, I'm thinking of things I can talk about on my videos, and I could record a video, but then when I have something to record, or record audio to go back and do it later, when I have something to record, I don't think of anything. But when I don't have something to record, I do. Or if I'm listening to my podcast stuff, okay, I'm thinking about that, but I'm wanting to read this book. Then if I listen to the book, I get way behind on my podcast.
Totally.
It's like, you can't win.
You're totally correct. Whatever you're focused on, your mind is like, but that means you're not focused on this other thing. It's like a background app in a phone, and you can't really turn it off, and it's just always on the background. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you really got to pick your medicine and really focus in to get it done.
So, Joe, a car is a thing that you get in to go to work. I know you work from home in a basement, sir, but sunlight is outside the house. That's what a car is. Cool.
Yeah, and because I don't get out near as much as I used to, I've started taking vitamin D supplements because I stay in the basements. Yep. I'm a basement dweller. I'm gonna turn into what are the underground people from the Time Machine? The
Morlocks?
starts with I'm gonna turn into a Morlock.
I don't know why I remembered that, but there you go.
Because it's a movie coming out soon.
Yeah, Nosferatu. But you probably remembered it because there's X-Men characters that refer to themselves as the Morlocks.
Yeah,
that's probably why you remember.
And honestly, that was one of my early books / movies that I think. Actually, Time Machine's not even a book; it's like a short. It's not a short story either. It's like what's the short novel? Novella. I think it's
novella.
Anyway, I just remember in the 70s version of the Time Machine movie, the Morlocks were very bad makeup, but it scarred me as a kid. So maybe that was it. So all right. We
are you gonna let me talk about a book, or are you?
You said Bob's book. You don't get to throw in another book.
I didn't even start his book.
Hey, you read the back of it. All right, fine.
Oh man, so I'm in the middle of the third book of Aragon with my boys. I am also in the middle of the Children of Dune audiobook and the 12th Wheel of Time book. Wow. But as far as the one that I finished most recently, I'd have to go with Bookshops Bonedust from Travis Baldree. So that's the prequel to Legends and Lattes. And I didn't even know there was a prequel until Chattacon. Somebody on the Cozy Fantasy panel mentioned it, and I was like, ooh, I should go listen or read, depending on which version I can find. And so I ended up listening to it on audiobook from the Libby app, and absolutely loved it. My only issue with it, and this won't bother a lot of people, but my biggest issue with it is there's one character that really enjoys dropping the F-bomb. So there was a lot of F-bombs in this book. Legends and Lattes had like 2, I think. But this one, it was every time that character showed up, there was at least one F-bomb in the conversation.
That just means the author got finished watching Goodfellas when he started writing. He couldn't get it out of his head.
But other than that, I really enjoyed it. The story was solid, and it was a lot of fun. It was interesting to see from a prequel perspective how the main character ends up where she ended up in Legends and Lattes. And so yeah, it was really good.
Oh.
Well, and Joe, you're welcome for all the F-bombs I drop off air with you. I got you numb to it, so you can still enjoy your book. Yeah.
There was a couple times when my wife walked in and just started walked in during one of those F-bombs. She's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" I'm like, "There's a reason I don't listen to this where the kids are."
There was one time I had hired a personal assistant with my day job thing. And I had just bought the movie Team America, and she went out to go drop some things off or mail some things off. And I was watching Team America up in the office area. And when she got back, it was right when the puppets were doing it. So I was like, "Oh God!" I was like, "I gotta turn this off." I was freaking out.
I in some offices I've worked in, I had data processing basically, so I always had a screen up watching a movie, and inevitably, it'd be a Saturday, I'm the only one working, and inevitably somehow, some way, the one scene that you don't want somebody to see at work, the puppets, is there, and somebody shows up magically, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "You're not even supposed to be here," and that's the 5 seconds of the movie I wouldn't want anybody to see.
I come here Saturday nights to watch this. So what? You just got to own it at that point.
Random kid, the life of an anime watcher. Yeah.
People always walk in at the worst moments when you're watching anime. Just how it happens.
It is. So
that's great.
Well, we're about to roll some dice, but I've got to talk about, I think Kurt is losing his mind, Joe. Because
he's getting on in age.
He is. Papa Kurt's getting on. He can still spell his name correctly, but somehow he sent a package to the Rock Dog of Frog Casting, and so I think he's losing his mind a little bit. But I got this nice little wall art for the studio.
Oh, nice!
This
That's
week
awesome.
of the Hulk, and then in the forehead it says Hulk there.
Yep.
Oh, so, cool.
It's pretty neat. So Kurt's been 3D printing stuff. So thank you, Kurt. He didn't design a screw peg for it on the back, so I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Flaw, you're gonna have to hit him on that.
Just get some of those the Velcro ones.
The 3M things. Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. But thank you, Kurt. I appreciate you, man. That is awesome. And so in honor of Kurt, nope, we already did that. Kurt, come on, get your brain together.
Roll that dice.
There it is.
All righty.
Daddy, tell me a story.
All right. It is story time. And I was kind of shifting gears as we were getting to know Douglas before the show. And I thought this would be a fun one to talk about. Dads, tell me a story of your first fandom.
My first fandom?
Yeah, like what got you into whatever you're into now?
Oh, I got
or
you.
what
Like when I was a kid.
what inspired your book?
Well, I got to say, you know, I'm a child of the 80s, and I don't remember it because I was only 18 months old, but officially my first movie was Star Wars: A New Hope. You know, my dad took me in there and he said I did okay for the first half, and then I got fussy. You know, you only use that word for babies, word fussy. But
I use it for Kurt quite often.
It does get it can be reused later. But I do remember Empire Strikes Back. So I was about 4 years old, and I remember being blown away by the AT-ATs, you know, because these giant elephantine machines, just like, and there's this one scene, even to this day, when I watch it in Empire, I just go, oh God, I love that scene. It's the scene where it's a long shot, and you see the three of them, and they're like right up on top of the rebels, and the rebels are trying to escape, and two of them are like looking in the same direction, and I was like, oh my God, that is horrifying. It never left my head, and I got sucked into Star Wars like that, like a lot of guys in my generation, you know, like you get sucked into it. So I would say that was my first fandom, and drafting off that was Superman from 1978. Okay. Huge Superman fan. And of course, that got me into the John Williams soundtrack and all that. So I'm a big soundtrack guy as well. So
all over the internet today is the James Gunn teaser trailer where he does it. They use a synth version of the John Williams score over the teaser 100%. Of the new Superman movie. So what do you? It sounds like you're excited. What are you thinking about the new Superman movie?
So James Gunn, I wasn't really sure about this whole rebuild of the DC world. You know, Marvel really hit it out of the park, I would say, from Iron Man to Endgame. Like that's incredible. In terms of cinematic achievement, to be able to cobble this together with 23 films, and really most of the films are really good. And I even think they mostly stuck the landing on Endgame. It's not perfect, but I felt like it was satisfying, you know, like they delivered on something. You know, after Endgame, it's been really choppy waters. But but so when James Gunn said he was going to start a DC, I was like, oh no, I just don't know about the timing. I don't know if is he the right guy, because he's more like comedic. He did really good with Guardians of the Galaxy. Right. So I watched the trailer today, and I got to say I'm mostly happy about it. It's very evident that the filmmaker wants us to know that he's sticking to the main beats of Superman. You know, he's like, there's the Fortress of Solitude. There's Daily Planet. There's Clark Kent in disguise. He's nerdy. You know, there's Lois Lane. You know, the hot, you know, journalist who works with him in a modern. You know, there's the old rural house that he's at with his parents there. The snow. You know, like there's a lot of those beats that are very familiar for Superman, and so I was like, they're really driving that point home, that this is going to be a familiar Superman, you know, brought into the modern world. And I think Lex Luthor looked pretty good in it. Looks like there's going to be a stable of villains in this, possibly. And the big gamble, Superdog.
Crypto was there.
Crypto's in it. I think that's either going to be a whole grand slam or something that doesn't fit. So I don't know.
Fandom Kid says, my first fandom is He-Man. Girls talk about Barbie giving unrealistic expectations for women's bodies, but we had He-Man.
We all fell so short.
I mean, He-Man was like 4'3" and buff as buff could get, you know.
And his waist was impeccably small for those muscles, for that muscle frame.
What about you, Joe? What was one of your fandoms?
One of my first fandoms that I got super into, I got super into, not necessarily something that my parents had introduced me to, has got to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Absolutely loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Had a bunch of the toys. Fantastic. Whenever I hear the 80s theme song come on, I'm loving it, getting real nostalgic over it. as an adult, I've purchased several of the seasons. I don't know if we have all of them, but most of the seasons on DVD. And so we've watched it all the way through, at least the ones that we've got with my boys. I'll have to double check to see if we have them all. I know we have 2 or 3 seasons, but I don't know how many seasons there are. But yeah, no, I've watched it with my boys, and it's also on, I think it's on Paramount Plus, and so we've watched some of the other, some of the newer stuff on there. Yeah. So we've watched a bunch of the newer stuff on there as well, like the Mutants of Mayhem. We've watched with the boys, but even beyond the cartoons, like those, the original movies, those first
suits?
couple, yeah,
Oh,
all of that with practical effects and everything. It's, in my opinion, it still holds up. Like, those practical effects were done really well, and I still enjoy it. Kind of like how Jurassic Park, because they heavily used practical effects and did such a good job with it, that holds up so much better than some of the older movies with early CGI. You know, there's Star Wars that's been remastered 27 different times.
Well, and it seems like they're relearning that lesson. It seems like they're going back to practical effects because they've overused CGI to such an extent that there's no spectacle to it anymore. So it seems like they are relearning it, you know.
That's one of the only. There was a few things I liked about the last 3 Star Wars that came out, but the biggest one was the practical effects of the X-wings coming down in the water, shooting out like it absolutely should. And yeah, you know, that was brilliant. But Joe, what did you think about the newest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie that came out?
That's the Mutants of Mayhem or whatever.
Is that what that one was called?
I think so. The one that
with the kids, Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Something like that.
Where they're actual teenagers instead of instead of where most of them portray them where they come across more as young adults, even though they say they're teenagers. But they actually had them as teenagers. I thought it came across really well. Art style wise, I've heard a lot of people compare it to the Spider-Verse films. I was worried about a lot of different things, but watching it came together really well. Other than the characterization of April, there were a couple of different things about April that I didn't care for.
Okay.
But the way they did it wasn't too bad, and it did allow her a lot more character growth than you've seen in other versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, because I mean, if you think about it critically, she doesn't have like any character growth in any of the other mediums. As much as I love her character, her character doesn't change. She's a very static character.
I felt it suited the reboot feel with them all being in high school and all being teenager and also modern with social media and stuff. It was all right.
It's a series, right, with episodes.
This one was just a movie.
Oh, okay. I think I watched the first half with my youngest son, and he liked it. I thought the animation was actually pretty good. And I did like that they were genuine teenagers. I felt like I was watching these quippy kids, high school level kids that are also crime fighters, and I think that's really appealing to a young audience. I thought
they wanted to fight crime in a way that a teenager wants to be a hero, right? That kind of rose-colored glasses, and then when the real fighting starts, like, oh crap, and they mess up a lot. Yeah, it was good.
That's great too. The reality of it.
Yep.
Going back to the 90s. Man, that's all I ever wanted was to see the Turtles in concert when they did that whole rock tour thing with the guys in suits and everything. I always thought that'd be awesome. I had a cassette tape. I had all the Pizza Hut memorabilia, whatever, but I never got to see them.
Joseph, do you remember that song? It was like a song in the TURTLE power. You remember that song?
Yeah.
Ninja Turtle song.
Yep.
Yeah, after school, it was G.I. Joe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Transformers. Those were like the big 3.
I would have to say my I was thinking about it while you guys were talking, and of course I did get into Star Wars early on, but I think I was a little bit older when my dad started showing me that, and never went to the theater as a kid to see it. That just wasn't a thing for me. My dad did. Like, he saw all 3 of them opening nights and whatnot, but they just didn't take me. I was left with the babysitter, so I saw it later. Then I was thinking maybe G.I. Joe, because it really was a big fandom of mine, but if I really think about it, Sesame Street, man, and the Muppet Show, hand in hand. Like, my dad would, yes, the Jim Henson, the Muppet. It was just, we watched everything they had, and it took me being an adult to realize the Muppet Show was an adult show.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were running reruns at like 7 in the morning, so my dad would get up for work and get me up for school, and Mom eating cereal. We're watching the Muppet Show in reruns. Or maybe he videotaped them. I don't know. But we're watching it together, and I'm watching Paul Simon and Steve Martin and all these people, and I didn't care. I just liked how the Muppets did their things. And then later on in the day, I had to see Sesame Street when it come on this regular time. And yeah, that was, and still is, probably one of my biggest fandoms. Well, as you can see, let me do this, because I don't know if I got to show you this.
Great answer.
Douglas. Let's say, as you can see, I got 4-foot tall Cookie Monster back over here. So,
wow, C is for cookie.
It is, and I loved when in the early 2000s when Brian Posehn did a cover of C is for Cookie as a metal song. It was hilarious. It was great. Oh man, such good stuff.
I just watched. We did a live stream watch party, and I never seen this movie, and I don't know how I missed it, to be honest. The Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw it and I was like, oh, the Muppets. They're like, trust us. You're going to love it. And I did. I became an instant fan. I brought it. I came home and I was like, we're going to watch this movie tonight, kids. They loved it. So now it's instantly part of the December cycle now.
it holds up so well, because I did the same thing with my kids. You never know, right? And you're introducing stuff to your kids. You're like, well, when I was a kid, this was great, but what are they going to? What about Muppet Treasure Island?
I haven't seen that yet either.
That's a good one.
And to me, it's one of the best tellings.
I mean, Tim Curry's good in everything that he does, pretty much.
Tim
but
Curry's
yeah.
All right, that earned an asterisk.
Not everything they did was great. There's a Christmas special they did that TikTok reminded me of, with Robert Downey Jr. in it during his cocaine days, and it was, his acting choices were very cocaine fueled, I will say. And it's like, yeah, I don't remember that one as a kid. So not all of them hold up.
Oh, that's hysterical.
So much fun. Good stories. Let's see where we're going to go next.
Man, Muppet, what a great answer.
Oh, yeah.
Did you like Fraggle Rock?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Loved all the original Fraggle Rock. We actually have the Atlanta Museum of Puppetry Arts here, and they have a whole Jim Henson wing with a lot of the original stuff from Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal and all this other stuff. That's in
Atlanta?
Yeah, and there's actually a mock set or recreated set as Sesame Street, so you can see how the puppeteers would be behind this stage and where the camera would be set and how they do things. It's if you like Muppets at all and you're in Atlanta and you got an hour or two to kill, it's very affordable tickets. You got to see it. It's amazing.
Got to see it, 100%. There's a movie that just came out called Saturday Night, and it's actually it's a really cool movie about the first Saturday Night Live. And I loved everything about this movie except the portrayal of Jim Henson. They make him kind of a buffoon.
I haven't watched it yet, so yeah. Yeah,
well, the movie's good. I'll be curious to see what you think.
Okay, so what'd you roll, Joe? Please don't say bad dad jokes.
Waka waka, bad dad jokes.
It's your favorite. All right, so this one comes to us.
For the record, it is not my favorite.
Comes to us from Diva Site.
When I was in college, I got really good grades in all my classes except for geology. It was because I took everything for granted.
Good old Devo site.
Do you have one to add, Douglas? Do you have a favorite dad joke?
Why can dinosaurs not clap?
Because they're dead?
because they're extinct. Yeah, they can't last. Those days are over.
Well, okay. I actually have one, Joe. I have one.
Uh-oh.
In the vein of Superman and Christopher Reeves being one of the greatest Supermen, right? What's the opposite of Christopher Reeves? Christopher Walken.
Oh no!
You gotta think about that one for a second. Yeah, think about that one for a second. I put the bad in bad dad jokes. So
the Hanukkah emperor now.
Shame on you.
I feel no shame on that one. I love how it burned in your brain for a second.
Roll that dice.
Oh, short segment. Love it.
What are you nerding out about?
Oh, well, Joe, you had two things in here, and I was curious about the second one, and now you took it away.
That's because I already talked about it. It was Bookshops and Bonedust.
Yeah, I thought
It was the audio
that's
book.
the thing. That's the thing. You're like, you're not gonna let me talk about a book. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you have a book and you're nerding out. That seems like a book, but all right, fine. What you got?
Arcane. So Arcane season 2 came out recently, and it sounds like Douglas watched it.
You just stole mine. I just can't. I was like, I'm gonna talk about Arcane season 2. Right.
Oh man, so they're done with Arcane. That doesn't mean they're done with League of Legends entertainment in general, but they are done with Arcane. They had what I absolutely love about the story from the back end stuff is that they had funding for like 6 seasons. So they chose to end it after 2 seasons specifically because that was the story they wanted to tell. And I absolutely love that that's what they did. But they've also said, look, that doesn't mean we're done creating cartoons, creating these stories.
Actually,
we're not done.
It's animation.
Actually, and the story itself is very compelling, very good. There's a very, very, very minute part of the League of Legends fandom who is upset because they keep changing the lore over and over and over. Like, not just Arcane. Arcane has changed the lore quite a bit as well. But along the way, they've revamped the lore 3 or 4 times. And they've even gone as far as to say Arcane lore is it's self-contained. The animated lore is self-contained and not necessarily the lore behind the game. And so I don't know if I'm assuming that they don't want to be fenced in to be beholden to what they're showing. But even still, the stories told are amazing. It's great to see some of these characters that I've played League of Legends a lot. I come back to it every now and again. I used to play a ton. Like I was basically addicted to it. That's how much I played it. And so I don't play near as much nowadays, but I'll still hop on and play a few rounds here or there. If you haven't played the game and you're curious to play the game, just know that the player base is very toxic. So just leave chat turned off, and you're probably fine. But yeah, no, the storytelling was great. They tied almost everything up, and based on some of the hinting at the end, I'm assuming there's going to be I am assuming that either a character or a setting will be part of the next set, because they showed a very specific crow, and one of the characters, he is very crow themed, and it's a monstrous form of a crow, so it's a very specific crow. So I'm assuming that we're going to be seeing that character and or where he's from. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what they do in the future. And yeah, I think my only complaint is they overused
camping.
No, so they it's a style, it's a choice. For some people, this might have been their favorite part, but they overused basically music videos. They had a bunch of scenes that were basically music videos, and a lot of them were very good. And as a self-contained thing, were very good. None of them were bad. It's just like every episode, it's like, okay, where's the music video in this episode? So.
Yeah, a little bit more overt.
Yes. So, but I really like. There was one specific music video scene that I really liked some of the symbolism in it, because they shot it at a lower FPS on purpose, where they did it at 4 frames per second.
Yeah, Jinx and
Echo.
Yeah.
Specific,
I didn't know if we're spoilery.
Jinx and Echo were in that specific scene, and Echo, his ultimate, the duration of it is a 4-second ultimate. So they did 4 FPS for a 4-second ultimate, and so there was a theme of 4 during that scene, which I really liked. All in all, they pay a lot of attention to the minute details and the continuity, and it all just meshes really well.
Wow. That's very cool. Now, Douglas, something special just happened this week for one of your favorite movies.
Well, what you talking about? This? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I was super jacked, and then B, upset that this has not happened sooner. But they just allowed, it's like the Hall of Fame mixed with like a time capsule preservation pod of human society should be annihilated. They elect these films to go onto what's called the National Film Registry. So these are recognized as culturally relevant, precious films culturally in the United States. And a bunch of them got in, and they'll grab a movie from 1921, 1938. So it could be from any spectrum of films. And one of the most notable was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Definitely my favorite Star Trek movie. I can watch that over and over again. And I've seen it in 4K now, and it's even better. I love it. So Star Trek II definitely has me geeking out because it's made it to the national film. So hopefully some other Star Treks will make it in there. I think Star Trek 6 is a good candidate. Also another good Star Trek, and possibly Star Trek 4, I think, is culturally relevant. It came out right after the Challenger exploded, and they dedicate the film to the crew of the Challenger. They save the whales. There's some time travel in there. So there's a lot to like in Star Trek 4.
I would say arguably from a storytelling perspective, Star Trek II is probably the best Star Trek movie that they put out. But then The Voyage Home was arguably the most Star Trek of the Star Trek films.
Yeah, they were tackling real philosophical ideas throughout
while
the story.
time traveling at the same time. Yeah.
Man, it's been so long since I saw 4. What was the reason why they had to get the whales back? Wasn't it to prevent some kind of invasion or something?
There was a probe that came from outer space. It was communicating with the Earth, but the communication waves were so violent it was going to destroy the Earth. And they found out that the communication wave was actually whale song, and that they were targeting Earth's oceans. So, but they couldn't respond to the probe because humpback whales had been hunted to extinction. So Kirk and crew aboard a captured bird of prey Klingon vessel.
Right.
Go back in time
to San Francisco. The sun, don't they, to help get that going?
Yeah, one lap around the sun. They end up in San Francisco, 1987, and they have to bring 2 humpback whales back into the future. It's a crazy plot, but it totally works, and it's a lot of fun.
I think the scene that I remember the most is how nonchalant Scotty is about the time paradox of creating that specialized glass.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's just like,
who knows? I didn't invent it.
Well, Joseph, you were fresh off of Back to the Future in 1985, where they told you can't have these kind of paradoxes.
but I don't know why, but the best scene that's always stuck in my mind is like, "Hello, computer, you have to use the mouse." Computer, and he speaks into the mouse and tries to get the computer to do things. It was so good.
Some weird looks.
Yeah. Fun little tidbit. I cannot remember if it was, Star Trek time travels, like in every series ever, there's some kind of time travel story arc in all of them. Because I at one point I was really bored at work and I binge watched from the first episode of the 1960s Star Trek all the way through. At the time, we had just stopped airing Enterprise with Scott Bakula. And so I just binge watched everything. And when you binge watch Star Trek, it becomes painfully obvious they love time travel because they will work it in to every series. And sometimes it's multiple seasons, sometimes it's not. But I think it was in Picard season 2 or 3, whenever they time traveled and went back to Earth, back to the past to Earth. The guy, I think they're back in 97 or something like that. So you remember in 4 and 87, there's a guy with the boombox playing the punk music, and Spock did the thing, and they brought that same actor who's now 30 years older and forward in time, whatever, as it would be in real life. He was on a bus with, I think Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9 was the character, and he's sitting there blasting music. She looks at him and just turns it off.
Oh my God, I've got to see that episode.
Yeah, just Google
That's
it.
in Picard?
And I think it was Picard. That was it. That's on Paramount Plus. But Google it. I'm sure you go, punk boombox guy from 4, and you'll probably find the scene side by side. But it was a fun little nod to it.
That's a perfect Easter egg.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, so mine are newish nerding outs, right? I just rewatched Solo Leveling again, then went to the theater to see the new episode of the second season come out, and love that just kind of thing of being brought into another world. And I believe that's called Isekai.
Yeah.
Joe? Hey, I got it right. And so Isekai is a portal world, right? You come from a world where
portal
more or less
fantasy.
it's real world, and then you get sucked into something else. And typically the ones I watch are kind of video game based. I get sucked into some kind of video game type thing. So I actually went at Netflix going, I need some more cannon fodder on my Netflix to run in the background while I'm doing stuff. So I looked up Isekai, and this one popped up. It's just called Overlord, and it's not the greatest, but it is entertaining. And the premise is, in the first 5 minutes got me. It's like, okay, I don't care how bad this is, because it's not going to be, I didn't need one I focused on. I have plenty of animated shows that I focus on. I just need something I could watch and listen to and go, oh, that's funny, and keep going back to work. And in the first 5 minutes, it's some game like World of Warcraft style. And they're obviously in a lobby for the game, because they're sitting at this castle table, and you got a big skeleton face, huge guy, and these other weird characters. But they're talking like we're talking, like, hey, man, I got to log off. I'm going to go get my homework done. And then the big scary skeleton guy's like, yeah, I get that. I got to go see my mom or something like that. It's just hilarious. In the I didn't expect that to happen. Well, the main character, who is the big skeleton dude, they didn't finish the raid, whatever. Everybody logs off. He's like, well, let me see if I can finish some other stuff up before the server goes down for maintenance. But I guess the real premise of the game is more like a VR type thing instead of just a video controller, because he didn't log out before the server went down, and then his consciousness somehow gets caught in the game. So you swap back and forth between his normal real world voice and the character's voice. And,
because his internal voice is his human voice.
Have you seen this one, Joe?
Oh yeah, I have.
Of course you have. Of course you've seen this one.
But yeah, and him and his whole guild get transported to this other world. Like they're not
the guild.
in...
The guilds are all logged off. It's the non-playable characters.
Yes, all the NPCs from his guild. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They get transported to another world, and so he's got to figure out everything, and he's also got to figure out how to invoke his spells and stuff because he's a spellcaster, and he's like, I don't have the game interface. How do I use this stuff? So there's a little bit of a learning curve there, but it's got this very interesting dichotomy where him as a human knows that he should act one way, but his character
is an evil overlord.
He is evil. Not only that, but he's feeling things in reality now, whereas he didn't behind a screen, a virtual reality. And so he is now a skeleton, so he's undead, and so he no longer has emotions, and so he has to. He struggles with that. So it's an interesting internal dichotomy of having this new awareness thrust upon him on what, from a logical and memory basis, this is how I should act, versus how he feels in the moment and how other people expect him, like the NPCs expect him to act. And so it creates a very interesting storytelling dichotomy there.
He's trapped in the persona almost.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And then it's even kind of funnier because all the characters are programmed and they're obviously non-player characters. And so it's like, in this world, there's humans. And of course, he's like, well, I will protect this village. And they want to go kill all the humans because they hate humans because they're all evil. And he's like, no, stop. I can't make you like the humans, but go protect them. And yeah, it's fun. It's a lot
interesting.
of fun.
So how far are you now? Because I think there's 4 or 5 seasons out.
3 episodes.
Oh, okay.
Like he just defeated an angel,
Oh, wow.
whatever thing. So yeah, I'm barely getting into it so far.
And this is on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I can't remember how many of the seasons are on Netflix, but yeah, a bunch of them are there.
Wow. It's called Overlord.
Overlord.
Yeah. And I mean, the animation makes it feel a little bit cheaper or older. I don't know when it was made. It's not like the most current cutting edge, but it's enjoyable, and I'm having fun with it. I kind of like that fish out of water kind of story.
It's not very old. It's within the past 5 years that it came out.
So they
and
just kind of use a cheaper style of, or it feels
an older
cheaper,
style,
or an older style of animation. Yeah.
Yeah, and all four seasons are on Netflix. So at least the U.S. version of Netflix. So
sounds pretty cool.
Now another one, because one of y'all mentioned something. Oh, you were talking about Arcane and the game, and I love Death and Robots on Netflix. So the same people who did those 2 seasons and that whole vignette of different stories now have done it for Amazon called Secret Level, and it's all licensed games that they're doing these stories out of. I just started it the other night. It is D&D. It was the first episode. And it's straight up.
I heard there's a Mega Man episode too.
I've heard that as well. And I've heard they only dropped half of the episodes so far. Like they dropped the first half in one batch, and then the second half is going to come in the spring or something like that.
And it's on what platform?
That's on Amazon Prime. And
I heard it got re-upped for a new season already too.
Yeah, before they dropped it, they announced there's going to be a season 2, which is not unexpected because you get great directors to do these little short films. I mean, they really are short films, and you get these amazing animators and great story writers. And the difference between the two is Love, Death, and Robots is really just stories, whereas this is licensed game properties written in conjunction with the people who control the lore of those games.
So I haven't watched what Life, Death, Robots or Secret Level. Are they all? Is it like an anthology where each one is a self-contained story? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there are some incredible episodes in that show. Man, there's always some that are better than others, but they don't really have bad episodes, right? There's like good, and then there's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And every episode is a different style of animation. So you get like almost realistic 3D rendering down to 90s style cartoon animation. Dog Soldiers was one of my favorites.
Yes,
that was
I was just gonna say there are some episodes that I've watched over and over and over again. They're just so dang good, and they're short enough to where they're so easily consumable. Like you're like, I'll watch it again. I got 20 minutes. Who cares?
Yeah.
And that was
are
a great
fairly short. I like to do it in the way they present it. So I started with D&D, and then my wife came in. We had to go do something, so I only cut it off halfway through the episode. But I'm very much looking forward to God of War. Is one of my favorite properties, and they have a God of War episode for sure in there. So yeah, it's. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited they're going to do a second season because that's just I'll consume that all day long. Give me that, like you said, Douglas. Hey, I got 10 minutes. I just want to wind down for the night.
Yeah.
Let me watch an episode. You know, and I'll watch Love, Death, and Robots every year or so. You know, because they haven't put out another one until The Secret Level, which is not exactly the same. I'll just go back and pick a season and start randomly going through and watching again.
That's awesome.
Nice.
All right,
Yeah.
Joe, let's see.
Roll that dice.
Double six is clear. We need another bad dad joke, right?
Yeah.
Time for a commercial break. Let's get paid.
All right, Douglas, this is where we always want to hear about. I'm gonna pick some music here. Let's see if this vibes. All right, yeah, we'll do that one. So this is where, everybody, you're gonna find out where to find Douglas's books. We haven't really talked about his books. We are getting to that. But before we even get to it, you see he's a cool guy. He loves hanging out with us, likes a lot of stuff we like. He's a nerd at heart. So Douglas, tell us about where we can find your book.
Well, you can find my book, The Heroine's Labyrinth. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. And it's really a book for writers, but it's to help you organize your stories. And it comes from an absolute love of all the kind of things we're talking about right now. Love of storytelling, love of some of these great stories in pop culture, and then where this has led to in terms of the story structure idea that I came up with.
And what's it called?
The Heroine's Labyrinth, Archetypal Designs in Heroine-Led Fiction. It is essentially a hero's journey style narrative arc that I found in heroine-centric stories, and it can help a writer right now organize their story.
And I know we've said it a couple times. I just like to get in people's brains. So let's just chill out for a minute, and we'll be back. You can join our FAMdom over at patreon.com/wise_n_nerdy. Be part of the Proud Papas and the parliament that we have there. And we're going to restructure it a little bit in 2024 because basically Patreon's forcing us to. So that'll be a fun time. And of course, as you heard earlier with the voicemails, you can call us at wiseandnerdy.com/calldad. It'll take you right to that screen where you can use a phone or any device that has a microphone, touches the internet, and leave a voicemail. And Joe, what is the question of the week that's coming up?
All right, so for our January 9th recording, the question will be, what is the video or sound clip that stays rent-free in your mind?
You always find some interesting ones for the question of the week. All right, what's our next segment, sir?
Well, before we move on to the next segment, we have several speak pipes from Devo's site.
There's bound to be some bad dad jokes in here, so I was hoping we'd forget.
Uh-oh.
All right, so here we go.
It is Sunday. I'm listening to the Patreon, and first day I've really got a voice pack. For a week it's been gone, so I wasn't able to leave anything. But I have to say right off the bat, congrats on the IMDb page, Charles. That's fantastic.
Yes.
But you are right. Joe, you need to work on your timing, bud. That was fantastic for after you got into the show, because then you could have really lost him and derailed him, which is almost more fun, but at the same time, very exciting. And I really honestly think that's wonderful that you have that. And I want to point out that you are correct about, since Phil doesn't have an IMDb page, and which is odd considering what Joe said about the RSS feed. So, I mean, despite their their show having a longer run and maybe a bigger audience, you're the bigger guy. So there you go, man. Congrats.
Yeah. So pre-show last week, Joe discovered that this show has an IMDb page which lists us as hosts. We don't even know how to get this. So that's really cool. I think it's on. And then you click on my name, and it actually has a page that has this show and one of my other shows I did a couple years ago. And I lost my mind because I thought it was really cool. And he did that all pre-show. So I did not.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, I'm stoked. What else we got there, Joseph?
All right, this is a follow-up on the IMDb, apparently.
I want to follow up on my comment about Joe and his timing. I do want to point out that despite his timing, what he lacks in that, he makes up in his excitement and joy for everyone. You know, you, Charles, everybody, everything, all of the things he does. So big positive shout out. I don't want to sound like I'm dogging on Joe, my man. He makes things happen, and I do appreciate his input and just bringing the fact that he went out, found, and started working on it. That's a big deal, and I just want to raise him up and say, well done, man.
Yeah, so he'll never be my biggest fan because Jebediah is my biggest fan.
Speaking of Jebediah, my wife popped in talking about him.
Yeah.
All right. We have two more from Devo site, which one of them looks like I should have played it earlier because it mentions the question of the week. But here we go.
I'm catching up with my voice back. Question of the week last was kindest person. I know a couple of people, dear friend of mine from high school, even actually from middle school. Brent, wonderful guy, always a smile on his face, never a crossword, always just considerate, helpful. Yeah, he's great. And I was reading this book, and it kind of crosses over to what great book you've read recently. And that is, I read there's a book called The Simple Faith of Mr. Rogers. It's not very big. It's a very small, short book, but it is a very powerful book about this man. I and most people in the United States, definitely through the 70s, 80s, and reruns in the 90s, I think they still have it. Now they have even reboots of it. I would, he was just an impressive individual, a minister, no less, but just really kind of lived his faith, lived his belief. He was very honest about his shortcomings, but at the same time, he used that to propel and lift people up and make the world a better place.
He really did. He was one of the greats, The Tom Hanks biopic was phenomenal, but the actual documentary, hands down, the best. It is amazing, the story behind how he created Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and changed the world and fought the networks to do it. It was great.
Yeah, I think I'm Gen X, and you did not grow up as Gen X without Mr. Rogers sitting there at some point in front of you.
Yeah. And for those of you raising kids now, or even, I found it when my kids were little, 10, 12 years ago, Daniel Tiger is an animated series on PBS that is done by the Mr. Rogers Foundation, which I think at the time at least was run by his daughter. And it is the heart and soul of the Mr. Rogers show in a kid form, fuzzy little tiger. I mean, they had the trolley. It's not word for word thing, but it is on a kid level, identifying with the kid. It is phenomenal.
And the intro theme, it's the same tune, obviously different words, but yeah. 100% inspired by Mr. Rogers. My oldest, he grew up liking it. Now, if Daniel Tiger song comes on, he flees the room. but he grew up really liking it.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, we have one more from Devo. Apparently, he learned something from you.
Oh,
Hi guys, Devo here. Got my voice back.
Do you?
It's Wednesday. I'm finishing up the Patreon edition, listening to the post show. And you, Charles, you mentioned something, and I found this very interesting. I think you said something along the lines, maybe even quote, I drove Lyft and I was doing podcasting. So I was a professional podcaster. And then, of course, COVID came along and messed everything up. What I'm curious about is, does that mean that Lyft is the preferred job of podcasters? And if you, does a taxi cab driver, or maybe a truck driver, or an Uber driver, and are they not professionals? I'm not familiar with the standard. Joe, are you driving Lyft? You guys don't talk about that very much. Or is that an old pre-COVID standard? Anyway, for those who don't subscribe to the Patreon edition, you should, because then you find out these little golden nuggets that Charles provides, information that I would not have known otherwise.
That's more of a Parliament of Pause. What is the golden standard for a professional podcaster? I will say I did Lyft because it resonated with my character and how they ran their company and everything they put forth, and the positivity worked. And I've ridden in cabs, I've ridden in Uber, and I've ridden in Lyfts. And I'll tell you, the cabs are just get there, go. The Uber drivers are kind of the same, but Lyft is almost like a, hey, let's hang out and let's talk. And what I left out of that story, while I was driving Lyft, I was also working live events, doing, sound and lights for concerts and with big crews and whatnot. And professionally, I was hired as a producer for Entrepreneur Radio during that time. So yeah, I mean, it was.
You had a lot of hustles.
I did, and
That's awesome.
And the podcast part was really what I was building and got me to where I am now. But it paid, but I did have to supplement. So yes, the golden standard, John, is Lyft makes you a professional podcaster. Okay, so Douglas, you want to be a professional writer? Just go drive Lyft for a little bit. You'll be a professional writer.
I like it.
Is that all of them?
That is all of them from Devo site. Yep.
All right, let's roll that dice. And again, while you're rolling the dice, we'd love to hear all of your voices. That's one of the favorite parts of the show that I have. And that's at wiseandnerdy.com/calldad. You can bookmark it easily on any device and just go right to it and have your voice on the show.
Yeah, when you guys told me about it, I was like, man, that is a service that needs to be used. It's like a super chat. I mean, you can just get right into the show. Yeah, you get right into the show.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've literally never heard of anyone else using it, which is a shame because it's awesome.
Obviously, somebody asked you. They don't keep it up just for me. So, well, maybe
no,
they do. Maybe
they do.
love the
They
rock
just keep
god.
it up for us.
Yeah.
Like, should we declare bankruptcy? We're like, no, Charles is still with us.
Every week he downloads some. Yeah.
All right, let's see. We've got
Council of Dads.
All right, Joe. You brought this one. So it's really the Parliament of Papas. We just got to get our kids to record the singers next year. So in the Parliament of Papas, we try to solve the problems of the world. Dead stop. This is it. And it's really problems you can't solve. Is these are unsolvable problems. So I don't even know what the problem is here, Joe, but we will. We've got Douglas. He's going to write a book about it. Let's go, Joe.
All right. So I heard of a very interesting predicament, and I wanted to see what your opinions were on it. This couple was going through IVF, and it was successful. They had the baby. They looked at the baby, and it didn't look like either of them. And not just this baby doesn't look at me. This baby doesn't look like my race. And so they did a DNA test, and it was not their baby.
Came back with that beep.
The IVF doctor had messed up. Their biological baby was born in the same town to a different couple. So it wasn't just a single mix-up. They had mixed up the eggs. So at this point, these two couples had given birth to each other's babies.
So it was the couple number one, it was their egg and sperm together, but and put into the second couple and vice versa.
It wasn't
I believe so.
husband and wives, right?
No. As
It's
far
more
as
like
I know.
surrogates, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, double surrogacy.
Okay. Gotcha.
Unplanned double surrogacy, basically. But at this point, each of those moms grew a different baby, got attached to a different baby. I don't know how long. I didn't in the story. I didn't get how old the two babies were. I don't know if they were born around the same time or anything like that. I don't know those details. But what would you do? Would you trade babies? Would you keep the one that you birthed? And all of the documentation, like the birth certificate says it's your baby, even though biologically it's not your baby. What would you do in this situation?
Oh, I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm keeping the first baby because that is ammo. It's like, oh yeah, I could have given you back. You go clean your room, or I will give you back. I'll take you to your room, mom and dad. Don't you talk back to me.
You're not my dad.
You're right, but I kept you anyway.
That's like Yondu. They like the taste of Karen, and I didn't let them eat you, boy.
Oh,
I am going to go the other route. I'm going to say, as a council member of this esteemed gathering, I think you count your losses and you swap babies at that point, and you're like, hey, I signed up for baby A. I ended up with baby B. We did the best we could. You know, we hit it out of the park. But let's swap this out now before it gets any further.
Interesting. I can't imagine what kind of legal thing do you have to jump through? Because it is, like you said, Joe, it's the documentation for the hospital that says this is your baby. Kid. Yeah. No,
so would you then have to legally do a double adoption if you were to swap it?
Yeah, like because it's your child, right?
Yeah. But there's no surrogacy contract or anything like that. And at that point, how much should the company be liable for? Like, if there are adoption fees, obviously the company should bare minimum be liable for that if you do the swap back. But beyond that, how much should the company be liable for mixing up the embryos?
Dude, this just happened in California is when this started. I mean, like November 2024 is when the New York Times posted this story. Crazy.
Yeah, I just recently heard the story, so I don't know. And maybe does it say it in there?
I'm gonna scan through it. I don't know, but
okay.
Here's a company that's like, look, like Gattaca. We're gonna design this baby.
Such a good
movie.
We're
gonna do this. The only thing, so they're doing all the hard stuff, right? But then you mix up the babies. Like, that seems like after all the things you've just done, this would be the easy part to deliver on. No pun intended.
Our store gets it right more than you do.
Clearly, they need to buy a new label maker.
Oh my Lord!
What about you, Joe? What's the Mormon Bible say about that?
That's not covered. But I think I'd want to switch, just like Douglas. Obviously, it depends on how old the baby is. Because if I'm assuming that they're still pretty young. If they're under a year, I would definitely want to switch. But if they've actually started developing memories with the parent, I don't like. If they're getting to be like 4 or 5 where they've got these memories, I don't know if I could.
It'd be.
But we've also got the advantage of being disconnected as men because we don't have that experience of physically growing a baby inside of us. A mother becomes very attached to the baby growing inside them. That those mothers, they felt the baby growing, they felt the baby moving, they felt the baby kicking, regardless of the genetics. they gave birth to that baby, and they spent all of those 9 months experiencing that baby. I think as a guy, it would be a lot easier. It is a lot easier to say switch than it would be for the mothers.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying it's easy. I don't think it's easy. I just feel like the child, when they grow up, would be like, "Hey, you didn't want me? What? What? You know, at what point did you just write me off? You know?" I don't know. I'd feel like for the sake of like continuity and like solve that as early as possible. To your point, though, I mean, yeah, I'm spinning in my chair and throwing pencils in the ceiling on this one, but yeah, I think I would want to try to rectify that as soon as possible.
I don't know, man.
I mean, in an ideal world, regardless of whether you swapped or not, those two families, ideally, would become a lot closer. Regardless, they would become a found family at that point.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
I think so. When the kids were 3 months old when they did this test, both sets of
so it did say it in there. Okay.
Yeah, both sets of parents were very much the same. Like it took, for lack of better words, it took the white couple over the ethnic couple to realize it faster. I mean, they saw it, but they just didn't know what to do. But the ethnic couple, which was Asian American and Latino, immediately like called the doctors, and nobody knew what to do. And that's the thing. They're talking about like the science of it and how much does biology really have to do with a pull. Whereas, the babies are getting the sense and they're learning the behaviors and they're already picking up on the different things. I'm trying to see how they resolved it.
I bet they haven't yet. Because like you said, it sounds like it's fairly recent. Yeah.
Yeah,
well, but there is always a curiosity about where you come from. Like I know I have friends that were adopted, and there's still always something compelling about who are my real parents. So there's something there in terms of the child as they get older, where they do seem to want to know who their real parents were. So I don't know. I feel like there is that hanging out there. when they get older, that their biological parents just said, we're gonna keep where we started this path. We're just gonna keep on it.
Yep. Yeah. My wife and her brother are both adopted, and so they have both found their biological parents. But my wife, my wife added her biological parents as friends on Facebook, but that's about the extent of her interaction with them. Is they like some of the posts that she makes, basically.
Yeah, that's pretty limited.
Yeah.
I've also had, I know friends who have had their parents either leave or abandon that, and they're still curious. Who was this woman? Who was this man? That left. So there is something to the adult mind where they do start to wonder about that. So I feel like that is being engineered early in their lives without them being a part of that decision.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and my wife's curiosity, she did want to know some of the circumstances, but she also wanted to know, like, from a medical history standpoint, what to expect in the future. And so she did get some medical history facts from her biological parents and whatnot. But yeah.
Wow. Very fascinating.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So it actually happened at basically this time last year, because it gets into January of 24. But the parents started visiting each other because they're only a subdivision over, basically.
Yeah.
And it got really weird because the mothers at 3 months had already attached. So now they're seeing a different man hold their baby and then they signed some kind of visitation rights agreement. Oof. And the kids are 5 months old at this time. And then did
they end up switching or just do visitation?
They were just doing, at the time they're doing visitation, but they said, they're 5 months. We need to go ahead and get it done. I'm trying to see if they get it done, but man, at 5 months old, I don't know, man. You've
spent long nights in the middle of the night taking care of them.
Man, I think there's got to be a lawsuit for the company, because the emotional stress this would put those mothers through would be incredible. And no matter how you solve this, there's going to be some real weight left, like specifically with the moms. Like you said, it's not just the idea of like, hey,
this happened in 2019. And so the pandemic hit in March of 2020 as they were figuring this out.
Oh, okay. So this happened 5 years ago.
They just reported it this last month. But yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay.
5 years old.
They so in 2020 they were 6-7 months old when the pandemic hit. I'm trying to say I haven't got. That's a really long freaking article. I haven't really got to if they swap.
Oh my God.
I don't know if I could, man. I get it. I get it. You see the pictures, and it's obviously the wrong child's with the wrong family. I mean, it is blatantly obvious. But at the same time, you gave birth to that kid.
Right.
You carried it for 9 months. And now at this point, 5, 6, 7 months, like you said, Joe, late night bottles, all this stuff, all this scents, all this comforting. It is crazy.
I mean, you'd almost have to just think of yourself as a surrogate at that point. Like, I was a surrogate, and I took this very seriously. And I don't know. I mean, we're the Council of Dads. What do we know?
yeah, that's a great point, Douglas. That is a very good point. It's honestly hard to say if the kid keep talking about visitations and this and that, and then basically it sounds like they kind of decided to joint raise them, like they're celebrating holidays and birthdays together.
Okay. So that's just
the
like what I said
like
they should
friends. I would kind of treat it as an adoption situation where as the kid stays with me, right? That's where I'm landing. And for all this other stuff, and I don't know, I'm not in it. Like I said, we're separated. We're the Council of Dads. What do we know?
You know what? I would love to hear some of our listeners' comments. Head over to wiseandnerdy.com/calldad and let us know what you would do in this situation, because there is no right answer here. Regardless, there is. Yeah.
At 5 years old, they're still figuring it out, basically. But it sounds like basically they stayed with the initial families they were born
with
to.
the birth families then.
Yeah, but they've kind of come together.
The birth rather than biological. Usually when you be birth parent, you mean biological, but in this case it's flipped. The birth parent is not the biological parent.
Wow.
Right. But it does sound like, at least for the kid, they get two sets of loving parents, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I mean, the parents are the ones having the nightmare. The kids are like, we're cool.
2 Christmases.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I wonder how the kids feel. Like, do they feel like they're cousins or sisters or like?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That is
nuts,
wild,
man. That
like
is
you said, there is no clear-cut right answer. It's really up to the individuals involved. I'd be curious how they voted. I'd be just curious. And then
I would really be curious how much that settlement was from the IVF clinic. That's what I really want to know.
Yeah, man, because that's
minimum. Yeah, go ahead.
It's stressing me out just thinking about it. I can't imagine actually going through it for years. So I would definitely feel like there's a lawsuit settlement there somewhere.
And that was early on in the article. There was a lawyer that got involved and helped both.
And IVF in and of itself is not cheap. So bare minimum, they should get refunded the IVF payment. Bare minimum. That is the bare minimum. Because there was a dereliction of duty there.
Wow.
You had one job, Jebediah. That was to write the name clearly on the vial, sir.
Wow. Yeah, man.
Well, in a very odd transition, we're into the last segment called How Do I? And I've been waiting all night to ask this question of Douglas. I find it fascinating, right? We did clarify at the very pre-show probably that this is not stories written from a feminine perspective. This is a style of storytelling that you have found. So how do I understand what a heroine-centric story arc is? Because I've actually never heard of that. So what are we talking about here, Douglas?
Well, most of us, especially if we love Star Wars, Star Wars kind of introduced us all to the idea of the hero's journey and the idea of a protagonist that leaves the native culture, crosses a threshold, confronts a threshold guardian, goes off in the liminal space, gains competencies, meets the wise guide, the magic talisman, and then has a final confrontation, a supreme ordeal, usually in single combat, in which hopefully the hero wins, and then the hero returns from this journey from the hinterlands. And this is a classic. It's Beowulf, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, A New Hope. These are very famous tropes. The hero's journey. Well, when I was writing my historical fiction book, Faraway Bird, I found out that the Byzantine empress who I was writing about, Empress Theodora, she didn't fit into this model. And, this bothered me because I pretty much bet the farm on the hero's journey, and I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And so I started watching films, hero-centric films. I started rereading hero-centric novels, Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, Their Eyes Were Watching God, Anna Karenina, Gone with the Wind, you name it. I reread all these books, rewatched all the movies. There's a ton of TV shows that are hero-centric, even comic books. And I found out that there was some major differences, and this began to really get the wheels turning. And I was listening to a book on audio called The Art of Storytelling, From Parents to Professionals by Hannah B. Harvey. And she was talking about Little Red Riding Hood and how this was a story that was designed for girls, that it's actually a fable about budding womanhood. And that's hence the red cloak. It's symbolic, and how prepares the girl for a confrontation with the masculine. And inside grandma's house is a beast in disguise in the bed. And depending on which version of the story you hear, she finds out too early. She either discovers it and escapes, or she finds out too late. Her fatal error being her inability to spot the disguise. And Hannah B. Harvey said that this was there's several versions of this story, and I thought to myself, inside grandma's house, I'm like, that's not a hero's journey, so that's pretty markedly different. And so the fundamental difference between a hero's journey story and the hero-centric journey is that most hero-centric stories do not feature the departure from the native culture, and hence there's no return. They tend to stay in the native culture. Even fantastical stories like Wizard of Oz, where it appears that it's all doppelgangers of her own home life, uncles, right? And you'll see this in other stories as well. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, brand new story.
Yeah.
It's all doppelgangers of her own home life. So there's a staying in the native culture for heroines. And so her journey tends to be inward into the native culture, where she uncovers usually a lot of deception, misdirection. There's a lot of hidden secrets in the native culture. And she will have aspirations that run counter to the expectations of her in the native culture. And she has to reconcile this by the end of the story. So that's a fundamental shift. And if you're a writer, screenwriter, and your story stays in the native culture, this is something you should immediately consider. There's 18 archetypal designs that I found, patterns that repeat, whether it's Ripley in Aliens, whether it's Dorothy Gale in Wizard of Oz, or Evelyn Wang in Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's these patterns that show up in these stories, cross genres, cross time, cross culturally. So it's incredibly useful and honestly quite informative. We're wise and nerdy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom when you start unpacking an archetype, when you start asking yourself things like, why does this repeat? And then what does that mean? What does it mean that she's struggling with her native culture here? What does that mean? Villains. And I'll keep this brief, this part here, but it's fast. Sure. This is always fascinating. Villains in hero's journey stories are fundamentally different from the villains in hero and centric stories. The hero often faces an archetypal villain that I call the distant dragon. And the distant dragon is usually somehow inhuman, foreign, reptilian, machine-like. It's a militant outsider. And this villain usually has the capacity to annihilate or subjugate the hero's culture, the native culture. And the hero departs the native culture to go confront this distant dragon and slay it, hopefully. The heroine rarely, if ever, faces that type of a villain. Her villain is homegrown, right there in the native culture. It's usually a social apex character, someone with social power that she's up against, and they are not overt. They're not obvious. They are disguised. And I call this archetype the masked minotaur because there's a duplicity in their villains. They are outwardly benevolent and dashing and sometimes handsome or helpful, apparently, but secretly tyrannical and oppressive and destructive. They can be male or female. Entangled, Mother Gothel is the masked minotaur. Sure. Titanic, it's Cal Hotley. These are people that are apparently good in society, but they're secretly terrible. And these heroines must unmask these individuals in order to defeat them. Now they could still fight them physically, and that happens plenty of times, but they must unmask them to defeat them. That's their goal in these stories, for the rest of society to see this villain for who they are, because the disguise has held up too long, rather than facing them in single combat on the battlefield, which is typical of a hero's journey. Both are good. Both are great heroes and heroic arcs, but the female protagonist just undergoes a different experience, and it's quite something different when you start to really dig in psychologically what it means to be confronting your own native culture, people who speak your language, people who share your values, or apparently so, people who know the social rules, sometimes better than you, authority figures. Psychologically, it's pretty difficult to navigate those waters. And when you pick up a book or watch a movie with a heroine, they're up against that all the time. And I think that that's an existentially different heroic arc.
Yeah, from time to time, people like to talk about favorite Disney princesses and whatnot, and I've always been drawn to like Merida, but it's talking about that, I need to go rewatch where some of that mixes, but
Brave,
staying into culture, right? She did this thing, and she basically cursed her mom, inadvertently, and just had to fix it, and then find the real villain that really made all that magic work, and then
right.
talking about the duality of Frozen, where you have Anna, who is very entrenched into culture and just blind to the masked villain, and Elsa, who felt like an outcast and kind of had that one-on-one battle, but really it was, oh no, look, Anna, this dude is lying to you.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. So there is an archetype in the heroine-centric journey called the Beast as ally, and they're usually social outcasts that end up helping the heroine. They're non-conforming to the culture. Han Solo, sure. These are guys that are their appeal to the heroine is that they are exactly who they say they are. And this is important to the heroine because nobody else seems to be, right? Everyone's wearing masks. Everything, there's misdirections. It's hard to get a read. And then here's this character who's completely off-putting, but he is authentic. And that honesty is important to the heroine. And she can develop a relationship with this character. And she often does. It doesn't have to be romantic. Frozen, great example of the social outcast becoming it's her sister. Yeah. But that's a great one. Prince Hans is a great masked minotaur. They really set him up to be the Disney prince, right?
They really did.
Yeah.
Finish each other's sandwiches. But you're talking about Star Wars, and as I'm seeing it through these eyes of okay, I see what you're talking about, the path of the heroine versus the hero. You got both of those arcs in that 4, 5, and 6 story with Luke and Leia. Luke is obviously the hero's journey with everything you expect from that, but she is the heroine's journey. And
totally. In fact, Star Wars is considered to be right. It's considered to be one of the fundamental hero's journey stories in our culture. Like, this is the American version of the hero's journey. This is it. This is our great one. And yet, once I found the patterns and I started mapping them out, and I began to study them over and over and over again to where that you kind of commit them to memory, I rewatched A New Hope and I was freaking blown away. Wow. So there's something called the broken truce. It's one of the most important archetypal moments in the heroine story. A lot of heroines will pretend to conform to the native culture for social harmony. They don't want to cause a stir. Now, they might break the rules secretly, but they're pretending. They're pretending to uphold these expectations. But at some point in the story, usually right around Act 3, there's a broken truce, and the heroine's like, "Nope, what I want is over there, and I'm going this way, and I'm not hiding it anymore." And the culture often turns against the heroine and tries to get her and bring her back. Sometimes this is led these forces are led by the masked Minotaur. You'll see these great pursuits of heroines all the time. Thelma and Louise. We just talked about, you mentioned Labyrinth, all the villagers running around. Beauty and the Beast, the villagers come attack her. So we see this a lot. Star Wars opens with the broken truce from a heroine. She is breaking the truce of her native culture. She's exposing herself and making herself vulnerable because she's breaking this truce. So it opens up that famous shot in Star Wars. Boom! It's a heroine-centric moment. She's a member of the Galactic Senate. She's breaking this truce. Here comes the native culture bearing down on her. And if you think about Darth Vader, one of the greatest villains of all time, and you ask yourself, what does this guy have to do with Luke Skywalker in A New Hope? Almost nothing. Vader and Luke brush up against each other at the end, and Vader recognizes he's strong with the Force, and then he takes a shot, but that's it. Vader is Leia's villain throughout the entire movie. Ben gets into it at the end there, but Vader and Leia and Vader. So Vader's the one trying to capture her. She's the one trying to escape Darth Vader. She's the one confronting him. He's the one who's got her in captivity on the Death Star. The more I watch A New Hope, the more I realize that part of the power is this great heroine-centric opening to the story. Luke doesn't even show up until minute 17 in A New Hope, which is bizarre.
She sets the tone. I mean, it's that iconic ship comes over to camera, but she is the focus. You really see no other real character until you see her.
100%. And actually, there are about 6 or 7 major archetypal patterns that follow Princess Leia through A New Hope. And then at the end, it does shift more toward a hero's journey. Luke's enemy really is the Death Star. That's who he's trying to navigate when he's in there.
Luke's enemy is Luke in bad writing because he's a throwaway character.
What's that flashing?
Yeah.
Han Solo is way more manly than Luke throughout the whole film. So
Yoda is way more manly than Luke.
Yeah.
Don't kiss your sister. I want to ask you a question, Randa. Kid, I'm gonna get back to that. But do you think 7, 8, and 9 with Rey? But I've never heard of this heroine's journey. I mean, it's honestly like, holy crap, this is making me rethink of all these different female-led things that I've read and watched and seeing why it's different. But 7, 8, 9 really just put a female skin on the hero's journey.
Well, and they also
misremembering.
Right. So, I'm not a big fan of the sequel trilogy, so I'll be upfront about that. But
sure, me either. People
have to remember. Almost all of us were on board with The Force Awakens. I remember veering off the road, parking to watch that trailer when it came out.
Oh yeah, I was all for a strong female lead, but with what you're talking about, did they not take the heroine's journey? Because it doesn't feel, in my memories of those movies, it feels like it's like you're playing a video game and you just chose female characters instead of male, but you're still playing like a dude.
Right. They had a chance with Rey, and I think they just squandered their chance. I think that the main thing that I feel like that they got wrong with her is one of the most important archetypal designs. And by the way, it's not only the most important archetypal design in the hero-centric story. There's a different manifestation of it even in the hero's journey. It's called the sacred fire. And for writers, this is a great concept because it merges motivation with the protagonist's history. So the sacred fire is what the heroine cares about the most. It's her cause. Princess Leia, her sacred fire is the rebellion. Now, here's the key. This is one of the most important touches to that. The sacred fire doesn't come from nothing. It doesn't just manifest itself inside the heroine, helter skelter. It comes from her parentage or her culture. There's something that was handed to her, like the old adage, passing the torch. Okay. That sacred fire came from the larger communal fire of her culture. That's why the conflict with the culture ends up being so important to her, because she's at odds with this thing that she wants to respect and honor, but her aspirations put her at odds with this. So you have to have and there's different motivations with the sacred fire. The culture cares about continuity. That's the word. Continuity is what the culture cares about. You must carry on something. You're part of us. You're part of the family. You're part of this heritage, this lineage. There's something you're carrying on. Leia's father, Bail, and she's adopted. Her father is one of the early rebels in the prequels. It's established he's against the Empire. He plays his hand cool. So it's not just that she cares about the rebellion. She's also honoring her lineage simultaneously. So is Luke, by the way. You know, my father was his dad's very important to him, even though he never met him in A New Hope. You know, he wants to know about his dad. He wants to know about his lineage. One of the biggest mistakes they made with Rey, she had almost no sacred fire, which makes her a shell or a hollowed character. We weren't too clear on her motivation. She never said, like, I want to become a Jedi. She seemed to end up there, but she didn't seem that, like, heavily motivated by it. And secondly, there was nothing in her native culture that was passed to her that she was carrying on that she seemed to care about. And even worse, when we found out what her parentage was, it's like, what? Like Palpatine?
Yeah.
Like it just got
the payoff
really,
just wasn't there.
It's muddled. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. So if they thought about that and gave her some culture that she came from, there's something but that came before her that she cares about, that she wants to carry on, that continuity aspect. You know, Luke wanted to be, I want to be a fighter pilot like my father. You know, at first it was just about being a great pilot because his dad was, you know, that he cared about that. You have to give your character that part of the sacred fire. And then once that sacred fire is in the hero or the heroine's hands, it's up to them what to do with it. And there are differences between the hero and the heroine in their personal claim of that fire, but you have to have it. It's very important and unique to heroines.
Yeah, it really seemed like with Rey, the plot happened to her instead of her driving the plot. And that seven was okay, but I think where they really fumbled it was 8. They really could have taken 8 and expounded on her character and done a lot with it. They left it open enough. Even with 7 having the flaws that it had, it was still an enjoyable movie.
It was.
7 was a remake of A New Hope.
It really was. It was.
Yeah.
But sometimes
without the good, strong female character. With 7, I was still hopeful for the trilogy. After 8 was where I was like, I stopped caring. Yeah,
I got real frustrated when I was because I go to opening nights for Star Wars. Like I'm just there. So you know how it is, guy. Like there's these great crowds on opening night, and I'll never forget The Last Jedi. Ryan Johnson comes on and he says this pitch like, "This is for you. This is my love letter to the fans." And I was like, "Man, this is really special." And then like they kill Snoke, and I'm like, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a big problem. And I was like, well, maybe they'll at least explain who this guy was. And nope. And I was like, okay, I think they're lost. And really, and I think we've all unpacked this over our lives here, but it was really 2 different visions from 2 different directors. You know, I've heard one of the best analyses I heard was that, and you mentioned it earlier, the great practical effects that reemerged in The Force Awakens. Force Awakens was like throwing the gauntlet at the prequels for being overly CGI, you know, and then The Last Jedi like threw the gauntlet at Force Awakens and said, I hate those plot lines. We're getting rid of all of them and we're going to go this other route.
Quite literally throwing some of them.
Yeah, literally. And then Rise of Skywalker throws the gauntlet at The Last Jedi and says, no, we're going to put them all back. And I'm like, okay, these guys, there's no vision. You guys really blew it. And it's possible that you couldn't have blown it any worse with this incoherent story. I actually tried rewatching Force Awakens semi-recently. It's unwatchable because every second you're watching it, you're like, this doesn't go anywhere. None of this goes anywhere. So, you know.
Along these lines, and fascinating. I mean, in your book, The Heroine's Labyrinth, that is basically an explanation of all this. Is a teaching and a how-to kind of book for authors to then write the good heroine's journey.
Right. These are not my prescriptions. I didn't invent these. You know, these are things that I started to spot from. So, which means that they're archetypal. There's something that's recurrent coming out of the human psyche from writers who are not communicating this to each other. You know, there's something called the poisoned apple. we all know the old crone that hands it to Snow White, but that moment of a villain in disguise trying to recapture or poison or disorient the heroine to bypass the heroine's ability to defend herself, that recurs all the time. And it's stunning. Kill Bill, he pulls out the dart gun and shoots her right before she's, right before they're going to go into combat. Princess Leia, Darth Vader's got her. Here comes that mind probe with a little syringe on it. So anyway, this is the recurrent archetypal pattern in our heroines. And so my belief as a writer or a screenwriter or even a memoirist or even RPG guys have gotten into this because they can craft stories and build open-ended scenarios with this. You're taking something archetypal and therefore timeless. So there's real power in that. And then you have to do the creative work that's unique to yourself to find out how you're going to take this archetype and express it in a way that we haven't seen yet. And you'll do it. If you try, you could do it, and you'll give viewers and an audience something that we haven't seen, and yet we'll understand it because of that archetypal power under the hood,
Man, we could keep going on. I want to get to this question. I noticed at times like, man, we've had a great talk tonight. Random Kid says Leia is awesome. So who is your favorite heroine?
My favorite heroine is Ellen Ripley.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Lieutenant Ripley. I remember seeing her as a kid. So I saw Aliens before I saw Alien. And I really, my parents were going through a divorce. And so I used that. I was like, Dad, can I see a rated R movie? Mom won't let me. And so he's like, yeah, I think we could do that. Aliens was what Dad let me see. I was like 11, and just blew my hair back for one, freaked me out, scared the living bejesus out of me, and has never left my mind. But I'll never forget Ripley going back for Newt. I was like, this chick's crazy. What is she thinking? No one would do this. And by the way, there's her sacred fire. There was a maternal instinct with her. And it's beautiful because there's the fire symbolism. Even as she goes back into sub-level 3, she's got the flamethrower, which is beautiful fire symbolism for what she cares about, what she's going to do. And what's cool about Ripley, she pulls double duty. She goes on a little bit of a hero's journey. Right? She leaves her native culture to confront the militant, outsiding, culture annihilating Queen Alien.
Yeah.
But her culture comes with her. Weyland-Yutani is there. The Marines and she has to unmask a Minotaur in that film too. Burke is the villain. And he appears to be helpful and good and benevolent and has some sort of authority. And yet he's a complete tyrant. He's willing to sacrifice her and a kid to smuggle an alien through customs, basically. So she pulls double. That's why Ripley's the best. She takes down the Minotaur hidden in her midst, and then she goes right in and she goes and slays the dragon. And man, what a ride with Ripley.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So Douglas, tell everybody where they can find you on the web again. And the book is The Heroine's Labyrinth. It sounds like a very... I say sounds like I'm not a writer, but it sounds like a very great tool to understand. And now you might have ruined movies for me because now I'm rewatching the arcs and go, you did this badly. That is not how this should go. But where can they find you on the web and your book?
Well, you can find me on X. I've just kind of dipped my toe in there, and it's funny. I'm running into a lot of people on X, so I have an X handle. You could find me on my website. I actually encourage people to check out the website. DouglasABurton.com. I put together like a 6-minute video, and it's really cool. I just addressed the first archetype, the labyrinth, and I use about 50 clips from different films to show just how recurrent this is. The imagery in films from Wizard of Oz to Aliens to Pride and Prejudice to The Color Purple. Or Ex Machina, like how often this labyrinthine imagery appears in our stories and what it means. So it's an easy 6 minutes, and it'll give you a little taste of the joy that I've had in spotting these patterns in these stories.
That is awesome. So DouglasABurton.com. We appreciate you being on and talking with us tonight. Hey, there you go, Joe. I knew you were popping it up. There it is on the screen. DouglasABurton.com. You can see it there. Joe, where can they find you, sir?
Right here every Thursday night.
That's right. What's our link tree? Do you remember the link tree? You got the buttons.
Yep. So linktree/wise_n_nerdy. Or to be honest, if you go to Google and just type in wise and nerdy, you will find us. Whether you type in wise_n_nerdy or just wise and nerdy, you'll find us.
Respect the underscore, right? Or embrace the underscore.
Right.
Embrace it, yeah.
Embrace the underscore.
Yeah, that's a long story that I drug out into this show. So check out Douglas. It's been a great talk tonight. We shut up, Mike. I'm not ready yet. We very much enjoy, and that is very enlightening. And thanks for coming and hanging out with us tonight. All right, Mike. Now you can do your thing.
Follow these nerdy dads on social media. Charles at Rock God of Podcasting. Joe at Joseph_Ard. Check out the website, wiseandnerdy.com. And as always, they may not be your father, but they'll always be your daddy.
And Veil by Kurt, except here on Thursday nights. Random kid says, "Don't kiss your sister."
Words to live by.